Hey everybody, I'm Maggie Vespa. Welcome to The Story, normally, yes, with Dan Haggerty. But in case you haven't heard, he's taking some time off this week, so I'm here to help our team hold down the fort. And as always, but really now more than ever, we're listening. So email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can reach out on Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag HeyDan. That still hasn't changed. Or you can message us on Facebook. And speaking of, let's start the show with that, because as we speak, protests are already forming for a fifth night in a row across Portland. But we got a message on Facebook about last night's protests that I want to address first. In case you missed it, KGW was on the air for more than an hour and a half last night to watch as thousands of people marched through downtown Portland to protest the death of George Floyd, a black man who died last Monday after a white Minnesota police officer kneeled on his neck for 9 minutes. That officer is now charged with murder. The vast majority of last night's massive protest was peaceful, and that flat out was the headline of the night. Aside from a few outlying incidents toward the end, last night was very different from the 3 nights prior. And what struck me was viewers were kind of confused as to why we were showing it. And as you know, we here on The Story are really big into showing viewer questions and answering them. But I'm not going to do that with this one because based on the content, I truly don't think that's what this viewer was aiming for. But I'll tell you, we got a message that I saw during a commercial break in our coverage last night. It basically asked, why are you on the air and why are you labeling this as breaking news? Because nothing's happening. With all due respect to that viewer, we disagree. We think something was happening last night. First and foremost, anytime thousands of people flood downtown for the same reason, forcing the police department to respond, forcing streets to close, and so on and so forth, that is news. That is something. More poignantly, we truly feel, amid a pandemic and amid historic riots and anger and rage, watching a crowd of this size work together to shift their tone and their tactics after days of, at times, violence is something extraordinary. And if we're going to give time and attention and breaking news banners and special long-form coverage to the nights when the demonstrations turn into riots, then we absolutely will give the same time and attention to the nights that they don't. What happened last night was healing, it was meaningful, and it was news. And to put what's happening in Portland in context compared to what's going on elsewhere, we also want to do that. So we're going to start with protests around the state. We feel this is important too. This is video from last night in Salem during a tense moment in protests there. But this is just one moment. In fact, the Statesman Journal is reporting there was a similar shift in Salem last night. The demonstration of hundreds was much more peaceful than the riots that they saw over the weekend as well. Next up, Medford. This video is from NPR reporter April Ehrlich, and she covers that region and says this was the largest rally she has ever seen in the Rogue Valley, and it was completely peaceful with lots of passion and energy. Then you go to a town like Pendleton with a population of less than 17,000 people. Ben Lonergan from the East Oregonians snapped that photo. You can see dozens of people taking a knee, holding signs that say Black Lives Matter and I can't breathe. That latter phrase, of course, among the last words that George Floyd spoke before he died. So don't be lulled by Portland into thinking this is just Portland being Portland when you see these protests. By all accounts, this is much bigger. All right, now let's branch out into the national landscape. And that's when you realize the peace that we saw in Portland last night actually was an anomaly among major American cities. New York, St. Louis, Seattle, they all once again turned chaotic and violent. In fact, St. Louis is under a curfew today because 4 officers were shot. They should be okay, thankfully. In D.C., the violence was aimed the other direction, with police in our nation's capital taking unprovoked action against peaceful protesters in the middle of the day.
Using flashbangs in front of them and mounted police to clear what has been an entirely peaceful protest.
You can even see a news photographer gets hit at one point. Another instance, one of many, of members of the media being targeted by police during these protests. Remember, again, this was not a riot. This was about 20 minutes before D.C.'s curfew was supposed to start. It was a peaceful demonstration dispersed with unprovoked violence. And a moment later, we saw why. President Trump walked out of the White House surrounded by police and security and posed in front of a vandalized church with a Bible. So all that to say, Portland looked nothing like those cities, thankfully, last night. And as a result, today, Mayor Ted Wheeler said that tonight there will be no curfew, no 8 p.m. curfew for the first time in days. Interestingly, he also wagged his finger at Governor Kate Brown because remember, yesterday, the governor said she was mobilizing 50 Oregon National Guard troops to act as support personnel, doing kind of like behind the scenes stuff because police were so overworked and they were so tired. She also said this, quote, Mayor Wheeler asked me over the weekend to mobilize the National Guard and put them in direct confrontation with protesters. This was not the first time the mayor has asked to mobilize the National Guard and not the first time I have declined, end quote. Basically saying that Mayor Ted Wheeler wanted the troops to be hands-on with protesters. Well, today, the mayor said, nope, not what I asked for.
I was alarmed last night to see the governor's mischaracterization of the city's request for the National Guard. They were requested, the National Guard, by me and by the Bureau for protecting buildings, not to be on the front lines directly engaging with demonstrators. That was never the case.
That was a big moment. So, well, I guess all we could say is you would think during, I don't know, one of the tensest moments in American history, two of Oregon's top leaders could at least get on the same page. And we'll leave that there because squabbling over the National Guard does nothing to help the people who have for a week been begging for equal justice, been begging to not be arrested at disproportionate rates, been begging to not be killed for no reason. So let's refocus, shall we? And let's focus instead on people like Savannah. She is Black, she lives in St. Helens, and she is deeply upset with her community. In fact, a Facebook post of hers is getting a lot of attention, and it features our quote of the day. Savannah writes, "The town of St. Helens makes me feel like I am not welcome to truly be alive." We read what Savannah wrote, and it broke our hearts. So it's easy to see that protests and think they don't have anything to do with you, but maybe Savannah can change your mind.
So I initially heard about the protest and the march that was happening here in St. Helens. It was going to start at sunshine, but then it got canceled because of threats of violence that was going to happen to our citizens. And I felt upset that the people in the community could come together to disband something that was going to bring us together in the first place. I mean, I'm scared. I don't want our town to be destroyed. I don't want things to happen because I love it here. But I also know there's a lot of injustices that happen, and the way that I feel and how I've grown up, I don't agree with how people of color have been treated. And it needs to change. When I first wrote my letter to address to the community, I felt that I was going to get a lot of hate because of what I said. But I was surprised to see how many people said that they completely agree and that they respect what I did. I just feel we can be doing more. In my opinion, I feel like the education systems need more classes about how to bring people together and teach people how to be respectful to one another. In my 7th grade class, my teacher would not allow me to wear my hair down compared to everybody else because my hair was fluffy and it was distracting, but it was different and it's beautiful. And it just made me upset that I had to deal with that. After the one at Sunshine was disbanded because of the threats of violence, I was talking with some more people in the community, and we're going to start at the middle school, and we're going to peacefully march all the way down to here at the gazebo, and we're going to do a sit-in, and we're going to sit, and we're going to have a moment of silence for George Floyd and everyone else who's been impacted by police brutality and discrimination. And we're going to talk about ways we can do better, things we can do to change what's happening. In a perfect world, I see everyone standing beside each other. It doesn't matter about the color of your skin. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what you believe in, as long as you can treat each other with respect, kindness, and compassion, and just hold each other's hands, lift each other up, be there for one another.
Adults can learn a lot from that. So what needs to change? Oftentimes when movements get as big as the one we're currently witnessing, the message can get a little bit muddled. It can be a little overwhelming. So the NAACP actually put out a list of what they want to see change. First, they want to see police departments ban knee holds and choke holds. Second, all departments must update and clarify their use of force rules. Third, make information about officer misconduct available to the public. And fourth, implement citizen review boards to hold departments accountable and build public confidence. As for what needs to be done locally, today we discovered a 4-day-old Change.org petition nearly at its goal of 10,000 signatures calling on the Portland Police Bureau to start wearing body cameras. And if you have lived in Portland for a while, you probably know that's easier said than done.
If we've learned anything since last Monday, it's the power of cameras to hold police accountable. So why don't Portland police wear body cameras? Well, it's a long story. So how did we get here? In the fall of 2014, a federal judge urged the city of Portland to put cameras on its officers, even though the U.S. Justice Department didn't require it. The mayor at the time, Charlie Hales, said sure. The Bureau even set aside money and held community hearings to get ideas. By 2015, things seemed to be on cruise control. The Oregon legislature passed a bill that created statewide standards for body cameras usage. The Portland City Council allocated more than $830,000 to put even more cameras in police cars, and the city pledged another $1.6 million to fund the program through the next fiscal year. Then, another year and a different mayor later, things hit a snag. Mayor Ted Wheeler questioned if the project was feasible and asked the Police Bureau for a detailed plan, including how much the cameras would cost. The police chief at the time, Mike Marshman, summed it up by saying, "That's in a nutshell why we don't have cameras today." But fast forward to January of 2019, and there was another opportunity. Portland Police formed a team to finally come up with that detailed plan the mayor wanted to see. In February of 2019, the city held listening sessions. And as recently as this January, current chief Jamie Resch said she supports body cameras and hopes to see a pilot program in the future. But once again, the plan hit a snag, because we learned in April that the coronavirus pandemic has blown out the city's budget. And the body camera pilot project was one of many things that ended up on the chopping block. And that's how we got here.
Like we said, it's a long story. So one thing I think we can all agree on is that when we get to the other side of this moment, we need to be better. And one easy way for people who frankly look like me to be better right now is to keep listening, like Brittany Falkers did.
Full disclosure, I'm coming to you today to speak my truth and my walk in this life, in this journey. I am one woman who stands at the intersection of race and gender and the union movement.
Donna Hammond is a union leader with the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers, one of the first women accepted into their apprenticeship program back in 1978. Born and raised in Portland, her journey was slowed by racial roadblocks. She succeeded by finding allies. Her perspective offers a glimpse into the pain and anger spilling out on streets across America after the death of another black man in police custody.
It's like another dig. It's what we know. This is our normal. Now you all, or the majority, you get to see what we see every day because we have a video camera.
In 1964, a young Donna was part of busing in Portland, an effort to reduce racial segregation in schools.
I had developed friendships that I still have today from elementary school. But counter to that, I learned that there were people who didn't want me, didn't want to see me successful, didn't want me to be there, and did all kinds of things so that, I heard as a kid, you need to go home. Don't come out here. Don't. One day I experienced, specifically, because they used to rock our bus. They used to call us the N-word. And one day when they were attacking us, at the end of the day, a raw egg came in the window and landed on me, on my chest. And it was just devastating.
That experience helped guide her when she entered the electrician trade as an adult.
I don't think that I could have survived a 4-year apprenticeship in Portland, Oregon, or anywhere in a white male-dominated profession had I not experienced the racism and the torture that I went through as a kid. So there were those men who wanted to take me off the planet, and I was set up to get killed a couple times that I know of. But then there, counter that, and just like what happened at the elementary school, there were families who supported me, and I'm kind of going back and forth. But on the job, there were white men, my brothers, who said, we're going to make you the best electrician that you can be. I always had allies.
And now, she says those types of allies are more important than ever.
I want them to listen. If they're in the if they are in the majority class, majority population, be silent and listen to folks when they tell their story. Don't try to one up and say, well, this is what happened to me. And, it's like, that's not what this is about. Learn how to be an ally.
Brittany Folgers, KGW News.
So Donna's story is one you can learn more about. She actually has her own historical marker. It's one of Alberta Street's Black Heritage markers. It's at the intersection of 17th and Alberta in Portland.
The story of George Floyd's death and the protests and the riots and the good cops and the bad cops is still the biggest story.
For me to be able to follow a set of rules, you have to want to accept me as a human, right?
But it's definitely not the only story. There is still a pandemic. The state is still trying to reopen, and the DMV finally tried to book some appointments over the phone. And if you've had any experience calling Oregon's employment department the last few months, you already have an idea of how it went. When the story continues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to take a little break from the protests for a minute and answer some of your questions because you guys have been sending in a lot of them. And I'm going to be real with you. We've been swamped, but we've been seeing them and we love getting your questions. So definitely keep it up through Facebook, through email, through Twitter with the hashtag HeyDan. We will get to them, we promise, as many as we can. Our first question is kind of less of a question and more of a criticism about what we're covering. Danelle wrote, "It's as if the COVID-19 pandemic doesn't exist and doesn't count anymore. I am still isolating due to age and medical factors, and I am quite disappointed in the lack of information you are providing." All right, the reality is, right now, as I said, we are living through two major historic events, and trust us that KGW is on top of both of them. We have a ton of coronavirus info online. As for where things are right now, specifically in Multnomah County, it is the only county that still isn't in phase 1 yet in Oregon, but it's close. Despite all the protests, officials say they still plan to, on Friday, submit an application to reopen, hopefully on June 12th. That's their target date. But they'll change their plans if they see more COVID-related hospitalizations. And right now, they don't know what effect the protests are going to have. Health officials want demonstrators to wear masks and to socially distance. And as you know, as much as you can during those protests. All right, next question from Lisa. There it is. She wrote, I drove by Dabney and Women's Forum parks that were open. When did that happen? All right, so the short answer is it happened last week, but not everything is open. I know it looks like it does, and there's a difference. Here's the gist right now. Both city and state parks are back open, but with some restrictions. Playgrounds are still closed. Tennis courts are open, but they don't want groups on the court, and they don't want people sharing equipment. And of course, they want people socially distancing throughout the park. So keep that in mind always. All right, James up next. He asked us, will you be doing a story on the Oregon Department of Motor Vehicles? That agency is broken. Yesterday, after months of closure, they reopened with one phone line available for people to call in and schedule DMV office visits. He goes on to say, although I tried all day to call in, the one, in all caps, phone line was jammed. Today, there was a message that they are regrouping and no longer scheduling appointments. We got several messages about the DMV, so we asked them. And turns out what happened was they just had way too many calls yesterday, 25,000 to be exact, before their system flat out crashed. They had 80 people trying to handle all those calls. So what they want you to do now is go online and see if you qualify for an in-person appointment at the DMV. And if so, you enter your phone number and they'll give you a call back. So basically they're saying, don't call us, we'll call you. And hopefully, we can only hope, they're faster than the employment department.
Well, the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season started yesterday, and like clockwork, we're already tracking what basically is the third storm so far of the season. A couple of tropical storms formed last month, but Tropical Storm Cristobal is churning out there in the Gulf of Mexico right now. When we brought you the latest information during the 4 o'clock show, was that a tropical storm, which it still is, at wind speeds at about 40 miles per hour. Now they've clocked up to about 45 miles per hour. You can see just how big it is. Still, the track of it's a little uncertain, but again, the hurricane season started yesterday. It goes until the end of November. This year's hurricane season expected to be pretty active, anywhere from 13 to 19 named storms. And like I said, we already have 3 of them in the books. Why don't we get them here in our area? Well, basically, the Pacific Ocean is just too cool. You need tropical water to really get those storms to move. When we say tropical water, we mean with water temperature at least 82 degrees or above. Out in the Pacific, the water temperature runs a steady 50, 55 degrees. As we look at our local forecast real quick, we are seeing some pleasant conditions out there on your Tuesday night, and that trend is going to continue over the next couple of days. By midday tomorrow, we'll be saying goodbye to some of the morning clouds we'll be waking up to, and hello to a little bit more of that sunshine with a daytime high of 74 degrees. And that forecast is basically what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of days. It's going to be just the same for Thursday and much of Friday as well. Changes do come into the forecast heading into the weekend. Maggie, back to you.
Look at Joe Ranieri in the sweater with the white tee. Did you get management signing off on that wardrobe, Joe? You look great.
I haven't got an email, so I guess I'm good.
Okay, cool. Gosh, I missed your laugh. All right, Joe, thank you so much, man. All right, get those phones out. Use the hashtag HeyDan. We're reading comments and answering questions after the break when we finish the story. Hey guys, welcome back. So many comments, questions, concerns coming in from you guys, and we really appreciate it. So let's look at some now. Sherry via email wrote, "Thank you for covering the peaceful protests displayed throughout the state this evening. It's so fatiguing to see stories based on if it bleeds, it leads." And Sherry might have been in with some old school media folks. I haven't heard that phrasing since I was in college. But basically, that is what some stations, especially old school ones, antiquated ones, used to run on. We here at KGW try to never use basically that motto or that thinking when we're deciding what to cover, and especially in this circumstance. So I'm glad you saw it. I'm glad you appreciate it. Let us know if we can do better, as always. Bill wrote, "Hey Maggie, with all the protests going on across the country," hey Maggie, I just got that, "going on across the country, we do not see a lot of consideration for social distancing, and I'm afraid in a few weeks people are going to be in the hospital." That is very plausible. As we said, health officials are scared by what they're seeing. These are massive crowds, and we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So we can only hope that doesn't happen. And again, they are advising people as much as possible, if you go out and you protest, to try and wear a mask and maintain your social distance. So of course, we'll stay on top of all of these stories. They're historic, and we're covering them as they progress. Guys, thank you so much for watching the story tonight. We appreciate it. Thanks for writing in. Follow us on Twitter, visit us on Facebook, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.